Welcome, dear listeners, to a magical evening where we drift away from the busy world and step into a land of fairy tales. My name is Hardy, and I will be your guide on this journey into slumber. Tonight we have a special collection of stories, tales born from the timeless tradition of the legendary Brothers Grimm and Hans Christian Andersen. These tales are filled with enchantment, whispers of wisdom, and the gentle fabric of dreams, perfect for winding down before a peaceful sleep. For the next few hours, I invite you to let go of the day, release any worries that may linger, and allow your mind to wander into realms of forgotten kingdoms, enchanted forests, and starlit skies. Find your most comfortable position. Perhaps you are nestled in your bed, with the blankets pulled up close, or resting in a favorite chair. Settle into your cozy spot. Close your eyes if you wish. Take a slow, deep breath in, and let it out gently. Let these classic stories carry you on a journey to places you've only dreamed of. Our first tale awaits, a story of a village touched by a mysterious slumber, a story called The Soft Wind and the Sleeping Village. The Soft Wind and the Sleeping Village. Once upon a time, nestled in a valley cradled by mountains so ancient they had forgotten their own names, lay the village of Oakhaven. It was a cheerful place, known for its sweet honey, sturdy oak furniture, and the kindness of its people. But one autumn morning, a strange and silent magic fell upon it. It arrived not with a crash of thunder or a sorcerer's curse, but with a wind. It was a soft wind, smelling of distant clover and forgotten lullabies. It rustled through the golden leaves of the oaks, whispered through the thatches of the cottages, and caressed the cheek of every person in the village. And as it passed, everyone fell asleep. The baker, his hands dusted with flour, slumped over a half-kneaded loaf of bread. The blacksmith, his hammer raised mid-swing, slept soundly against his anvil. Children in the village square, in the middle of a game of tag, lay dreaming on the soft grass, their faces serene. The entire village of Oakhaven was caught in a deep, unbreakable slumber, frozen in a single peaceful moment. All except for one, a young woman named Alara, who was sitting by her window, mending a tapestry, did not fall asleep. For Alara, the wind did not feel like a lullaby. To her, it felt like a story. Her grandmother, a wise woman who knew the secrets of the valley, had taught her how to listen not just with her ears, but with her heart. And Alara's heart heard a deep loneliness in the wind's song. She walked through the silent streets of her home. It was beautiful, yet haunting. A world without motion, without sound, save for the ever-present, whispering wind. She saw her friends, her family, all lost in this enchanted sleep. Fear tried to prick at her heart, but the wind's sad melody soothed it away, replacing it with a profound sense of purpose. She knew she could not wake them by shouting or shaking them. She had to find the source of the wind's song. Putting on a warm cloak and packing a small satchel with bread and a water skin, Alara set off towards the highest mountain overlooking the valley, the one the elders called Whisperwind Peak. It was from that direction the wind seemed to flow. The journey was quiet and strange. The forest on the mountain's slope was also under the spell. Squirrels slept curled in the crooks of branches, and a great stag dreamed on a bed of moss, its antlers like a leafless crown. Alara walked softly, her footsteps muffled by the fallen leaves. As she climbed higher, the wind grew stronger, its song more complex. It no longer sounded just lonely. It now carried melodies of immense age, of forgotten seasons, and of a profound solitude that stretched back for centuries. After a day of climbing, as the sun began to set and paint the sky in hues of orange and lilac, Alara reached a plateau near the summit. There, standing alone, was a tree unlike any she had ever seen. It was enormous, its bark the color of polished silver, and its leaves were not leaves at all, but countless slivers of shimmering, pale blue crystal. This was the source. As the wind passed through its crystalline leaves, they chimed together, creating the vast, enchanting, and sorrowful music that had put her entire village to sleep. The tree was an ancient, magical being, and its song was its voice. Alara approached the tree with reverence, not fear. She placed her hand upon its silvery bark, and listened with her heart, as her grandmother had taught her. She felt the tree's immense loneliness. For 1,000 years, it had stood here, watching the world change, watching generations of people live and die in the valley below. But no one had ever come close enough to hear its story. Its song was a call for companionship, a lullaby so powerful with longing that it inadvertently put the living world to sleep. hoping to bring them into its long, lonely dream. Alara knew she could not chop down the tree or break its leaves. That would be cruelty beyond measure. It was not a monster, it was a lonely heart. She sat down at the base of the great crystal tree, opened her satchel, and took out her tapestry and needle. The tapestry she had been mending depicted the life of Oakhaven, the spring festival, the summer harvest, the cozy winter nights by the fire. As the moon rose, casting a spectral glow on the crystal leaves, Alara began to work. She did not mend the old tapestry. She began a new one. With threads of brown, green and gold, she wove the story of her village for the tree. She wove the baker, laughing as he pulled hot bread from the oven. She wove the children, their faces bright with joy, as they chased butterflies. She wove her own family, sharing stories by candlelight. With every stitch she poured a memory, a feeling, a piece of her village's soul into the cloth. She worked through the entire night, the wind's music washing over her. But now, it did not feel so lonely. It felt as though the tree were watching her, listening to her silent story. As the first rays of dawn touched the peak, Alara finished her work. She held up the tapestry. It was a vibrant, living story of Oakhaven. She gently tied it to one of the lowest branches of the crystal tree, where the wind could make it dance. "This is for you," she whispered. "So you are never alone." A change occurred. The wind for the first time softened. The chiming of the crystal leaves shifted from a lament to a gentle, curious hum. The tree had received her gift. It had found a friend. The crushing loneliness in its song began to recede, replaced by a melody of quiet contentment. As the new, softer song drifted down into the valley, a miracle happened. The baker stirred, blinking in the morning light, smelling the unbaked bread. The blacksmith yawned, lowering his hammer with a clank. The children on the village green sat up, rubbing their eyes, and then laughed, resuming their game as if only a moment had passed. The people of Oakhaven awoke, feeling wonderfully rested, with the faint memory of a beautiful, strange dream, and a melody they couldn't quite place. Alara made her way back down the mountain. When she arrived, the village was alive with chatter and activity. No one knew what had happened, or that she had saved them, and Alara did not tell them. It was a secret she shared with the wind and the ancient silver-barked tree. From that day on, the wind from Whisperwind Peak was different. It was still soft, still musical, but it never again carried the weight of loneliness. It was a gentle, soothing breeze that brought with it the most peaceful of dreams. And sometimes, on a quiet evening, if you listened with your heart, you could hear not one song but two. The ancient chiming of the crystal leaves, and the whispered story of a village, woven in thread, dancing in the wind. And so, the village of Oakhaven was saved not by a sword but by an act of understanding and kindness. A beautiful reminder that even the greatest magic can be touched by a simple gift from the heart. Let's take a moment here to rest. Let the story settle. Take another slow, deep breath. Feel the gentle rhythm of your own breathing, like the soft wind that now whispers through Oakhaven. Let your shoulders relax, your mind grow still. In a few moments, our next tale will begin. A story of an ancient forest and the secrets it holds. The gentle whisper of the forest spirits. Our journey now takes us deep into the heart of the verdant wood, a forest so vast and ancient, it was said to be the breathing lung of the kingdom. The trees here were giants, their canopies so thick that the sunlight dappled the mossy ground in shifting patterns of gold and green. This was a place of deep magic, a place inhabited by spirits. They were not ghosts or fairies, but the very life force of the forest itself, the spirit of the ancient oak, the spirit of the bubbling spring, the spirit of the shy foxglove. They were invisible to most, but they had a voice, a gentle whisper that rustled in the leaves and murmured in the brooks. And there was one who could hear them. His name was Finn. He was a young man who lived in a small cottage at the edge of the verdant wood. He was quiet and gentle, with eyes the color of moss and hands that were always stained with the earth from his herb garden. The other villagers thought him strange, for he would often stand for hours under the boughs of a great willow, his head cocked as if listening to a conversation no one else could hear. And in a way he was. The forest spirits were his friends. They would whisper to him where the rarest herbs grew, which berries were sweet, and when the rains were coming. In return, Finn cared for the forest. He would clear fallen branches from the pathways, replant saplings that had been uprooted, and thank the forest for its gifts. But one year, a sickness began to creep into the verdant wood. It started at the edges, a creeping grey blight that turned the vibrant moss to ash and caused the leaves of the trees to wither and curl. The whispers of the forest spirits, once cheerful and serene, grew faint and filled with pain. Their voices became like the dry rustle of dying leaves. Finn's heart ached. He tried everything he knew. He made poultices for the bark of the sickened trees and sang songs of healing to the soil. But the blight continued to spread, a slow, silent wave of decay moving towards the forest's heart. One evening, as twilight settled, the whisper of the oldest spirit, the great river oak, called to him. Its voice was weak, a mere thread of sound. The heartstone, it fades, come to the center, before the silence falls. Finn had heard tales of the heartstone, a mythical gem hidden deep within the woods that was said to be the source of all the forest's life and magic. He had never known if the stories were true, but now he had no choice but to believe. With a lantern in his hand, and a heart full of determination, Finn ventured deeper into the verdant wood than ever before. He walked for a day and a night, guided by the fading whispers of the spirits. The further he went, the more the blight surrounded him. The air grew heavy and still. The forest was dying, and he could feel its life ebbing away. Finally, the spirits guided him to a part of the forest he had never seen, a small hidden glade, encircled by a ring of ancient weeping willows. In the center of the glade was a small pool of water, clear and still, and at the bottom of that pool, resting on a bed of smooth white stones, was the heartstone. It was a crystal the size of a loaf of bread, and it should have been glowing with a brilliant emerald light, pulsing with the life of the forest. But its light was now a dim flickering glimmer, like a dying ember. A network of dark creeping cracks spiderwebbed its surface. The river oak's whisper was right. It was fading. Finn waded into the cool water, and carefully lifted the heartstone. It felt cold in his hands, not with the cold of stone, but with the cold of exhaustion. As he held it, he finally understood. The forest had given so much. For centuries, it had provided wood for homes, herbs for healing, clean water to drink, and clean air to breathe. It gave its magic freely to the world. But no one had given anything back. The villagers took what they needed, but they had forgotten to be grateful. They had forgotten to care for the forest in return. The heartstone was not being attacked by a dark sorcerer or a terrible beast. It was simply exhausted. It had given so much of itself that it had nothing left. Finn knew what he must do. He could not heal the stone with a potion or a spell. It needed something more. It needed gratitude. He gently placed the heartstone back in the pool. Then he knelt at the water's edge, bowed his head, and began to speak from his heart. He thanked the forest for the shade of its trees, for the sweetness of its berries, for the music of its whispers. He thanked it for being his friend, his home. Then he began to sing, a simple quiet song of thanks and reverence that his mother had taught him long ago. As he sang, he poured all his love and respect for the verdant wood into the melody. At first nothing happened, but Finn did not stop. He stayed by the pool, tending to the glade. He cleared away the dead leaves, brought fresh clean water from a mountain spring to replenish the pool, and planted small flowering herbs around its edge. Every day he would speak to the stone, telling it stories of the beautiful things it had created. And every evening, he would sing his song of thanks. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, a change began. A faint warm pulse emanated from the heartstone. A soft green light, no bigger than a firefly, began to glow deep within its core. Encouraged, Finn returned to his village. He did not speak of the heartstone, for he knew they would not understand. Instead, he began to teach them in small ways. He showed the children how to plant a new tree for every one that was cut down. He showed the herbalists how to harvest plants without harming them. He organized a festival of thanks, where the villagers brought offerings of song, crafts, and hand-carved trinkets to the edge of the forest, leaving them at the feet of the great trees as a sign of their gratitude. The people, reminded by Finn's gentle example, began to remember their connection to the forest. They started to see it not just as a resource, but as a living, breathing entity that deserved their respect. And in the hidden glade, the heartstone responded. With every act of kindness, every song of thanks, every newly planted sapling, its light grew stronger. The emerald glow expanded, pushing back the darkness, healing the cracks on its surface. The grey blight began to recede. New green shoots pushed through the ashen soil. The leaves of the trees unfurled, vibrant and healthy. And one morning, as Finn walked through the woods, he heard it. a chorus of whispers, clear and joyful, rising through the leaves. The spirits were laughing again. The verdant wood was alive. Finn never told anyone the secret of the Heartstone. He didn't have to, for he had taught the people the most important magic of all, that a heart filled with gratitude is the greatest healing power in the world, and that when we care for nature, it will always care for us in return. We have journeyed with Alara, who taught a lonely ancient being the meaning of friendship, and we have walked with Finn, who healed a dying forest with the simple, powerful magic of gratitude. These stories remind us to listen closely to the world around us, and to give back to the world that gives us so much. Our magical evening is halfway through, but there are many more realms to visit and wonders to behold. Let's allow ourselves to sink even deeper into relaxation now, deeper into comfort. Prepare to drift away once more as we travel to a moonlit lake where a secret lies sleeping in the form of a beautiful, dreaming swan. The enchanted lake and the dreaming swan. In the kingdom of Silvermere, famous for its silver mines and moonstone jewelry, there was a lake. It was not the largest lake, nor the most famous, but it was the most magical. It was called the Glasswater, for its surface was so perfectly still and clear. It was said to hold the reflection of the stars, even at midday. The lake was the favorite refuge of Prince Alaric. He was a good and kind prince, but his days were filled with the heavy weight of royal duties, meetings, decrees, and matters of state. His heart longed for quiet and wonder, and he found both at the edge of the Glasswater. Every evening he would ride to the lake and simply sit upon its shore, watching the colors of the sunset melt into the water. It was there he saw her, a single magnificent swan. She was whiter than fresh snow, with eyes like polished obsidian, and she moved with an elegance that seemed almost otherworldly. She was always alone, and she seemed to possess a strange intelligence. When the prince was troubled, she would swim closer, her presence a silent comfort. When he was joyful, she would glide across the water in a graceful dance. Alaric found himself speaking to her, sharing his hopes and his burdens. He felt somehow that she understood. He became obsessed with the mysterious swan. The royal huntsman told him she had been on the lake for as long as anyone could remember, always alone. They called her the dreaming swan, for she never seemed to sleep, but glided endlessly, as if lost in a waking dream. One night, drawn by a particularly brilliant full moon, Alaric stayed at the lake longer than usual. The moonlight poured down like liquid silver, making the Glasswater shimmer and glow. As he watched the swan swam to the center of the lake, a luminous mist began to rise from the water, enveloping her completely. Alaric held his breath. When the mist cleared, the swan was gone. In her place, standing waist deep in the water, was a maiden. Her hair was as white as swan feathers, and her gown seemed woven from moonlight itself. She was the most beautiful woman Alaric had ever seen, but her eyes held a profound sadness, the same reflective quality he had seen in the swan. He cautiously approached the shore. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice a whisper. She turned to him, her expression one of gentle sorrow. "I am Lyra, and this is my prison, and my sanctuary." She told him her story. She was not a princess cursed by a jealous witch, but a guardian, a spirit of the lake bound to it for centuries. An ancient greedy sorcerer, wanting to drain the lake to get to the moonstones he believed were at its bottom, had cast a spell upon her. She was forced into the form of a swan, only able to become human for the few hours of the full moon. The spell was tied not by a magical artifact, but by her own memories. The sorcerer had trapped her in a dream of her past, making her forget her true power and purpose as a guardian. As the swan, she was in a constant state of dreaming, forgetting why she was there, only feeling a vague duty to swim upon the water. To break the spell, she explained, her voice like the chiming of distant bells, "I must remember who I truly am. I must awaken from the dream." A different prince might have drawn his sword and vowed to slay the sorcerer. But Alaric, who had spent so many nights in quiet contemplation, understood that this was not a battle to be won with steel. It was a journey of the heart. "Then let me help you remember," he said. For the next full moon, and the one after, Alaric would come to the lake and listen. Lyra would tell him fractured pieces of her memories as they surfaced. A snatch of an ancient song, the feeling of sunlight on water, the name of a star. Alaric listened patiently, like a scholar piecing together a forgotten text. He realized the lake itself was the key. The Glasswater did not just reflect the sky, it reflected truth. On the night of the third full moon, he did not wait for her on the shore. He waded into the cool, shimmering water to meet her. The dream holds you captive, he said softly. Let us not fight it, let us enter it together. He took her hand and asked her to look into the water, not at her own reflection, but deeper. Show me your first memory, he whispered. As they both gazed into the depths, the reflection of the moon and stars wavered, and a new image appeared on the surface. It was Lyra, centuries ago, her form made of light and water, singing as she guided the moonbeams into the heart of the lake, charging the moonstones with their magic. She gasped. A piece of her memory had returned. Show me who you protect, Alaric urged gently. The image shifted. They saw the creatures of the lake, fish with silver scales, turtles with moss on their backs, and the luminous plants that grew at the bottom, all thriving under her care. She remembered her love for them, her purpose. Finally he asked the hardest question. Show me the sorcerer. The water darkened. The image of a man with a cruel face appeared. His hands weaving a dark smoky spell. They saw him bind her, not with chains, but with whispers of doubt, telling her she was powerless, that her memories were just dreams, that her only reality was to be a lonely swan on a forgotten lake. Seeing it reflected in the water, Lyra saw the lie for what it was. The sorcerer's power was not in his magic, but in her forgetting. I remember now, she whispered, her voice growing strong. I am not the dreaming swan. I am Lyra, the guardian of the glass water. This is my lake. As she spoke her truth, a brilliant light erupted from her, a light of pure moonlight. It shot across the water, illuminating the entire forest. The oppressive magic of the sorcerer's spell shattered like glass. She was no longer bound to the full moon. She was free. The sorcerer, miles away in his dark tower, felt his power over the lake break. He was never seen in Silvermere again. Lyra, now in her true form, a radiant spirit of moonlight and water, stayed with her lake, and Alaric stayed with her. He did not renounce his crown, but he ruled with a new wisdom, a wisdom learned from the quiet patience of the glass water. He ruled by day, and by night he would return to the lake, to be with the guardian he loved. They learned that some curses are not broken by a hero's kiss or a magic sword, but by the quiet courage to remember who you truly are, and to see your own truth reflected at you in the eyes of someone who cares. The Sleepy Kingdom and the Moonlit Garden. Let us now travel to a kingdom that was very, very quiet. The kingdom of Somnolence was not an unhappy place. Its people were well fed, its streets were clean, and its king was kind. But everyone in Somnolence was always just a little bit sleepy. They moved slowly, spoke in soft monotones, and yawned more than they smiled. The bakers baked plain bread, because exotic spices were too exotic. The weavers used only grey and brown threads, because bright colors were too stimulating. Their dreams were dull and colorless, simple replays of their slow, sleepy days. The kingdom had forgotten what it felt like to be truly awake, to feel a spark of creativity or a thrill of joy. In this sleepy kingdom lived a young woman named Lena. She was the royal lamplighter. Every evening at dusk, it was her job to walk through the capital city with her long pole and light the street lamps, and every morning at dawn, she would extinguish them. Lena was different. While everyone else seemed to be in a perpetual daze, she felt a little flicker of curiosity inside her, a tiny flame that refused to go out. She loved her job because it allowed her to be alone in the quiet hours of twilight and dawn, the two times of day when the kingdom seemed to hold a hint of magic. She especially loved the moon. On clear nights, it seemed to be the only thing in the kingdom that was truly brilliantly awake. One night, while lighting the lamps near the back of the royal castle, she noticed something peculiar. A single slender beam of moonlight was not falling on the ground, but seemed to stop at a high stone wall that was covered in ancient thick ivy. The wall had no gate and no windows. Lena had passed it 1,000 times and assumed it was just the back of the castle. But tonight she could almost hear a faint silvery hum coming from beyond the stone. Her curiosity finally overpowering her sleepy nature, she found a foothold in the ivy and began to climb. The wall was taller than it looked, but she persevered, and when she peered over the top, her breath caught in her throat. Below her lay a hidden garden, but it was no ordinary garden. It was a moon garden. It was filled with flowers she had never seen before. Flowers with petals of shimmering silver, pale blue, and luminous white. They were all in full bloom, and they seemed to drink in the moonlight, glowing with a soft internal light. The air was filled with the most enchanting fragrance she had ever smelled. A scent like night blooming jasmine, sweet vanilla, and something else, something like starlight and dreams. As she breathed in the scent, the little flicker of curiosity inside her burst into a warm, bright flame. She felt a rush of energy, of wonder. Ideas and melodies began to dance in her head. For the first time, she felt truly fully awake. She carefully climbed down into the garden. As she walked among the glowing flowers, she saw a small tarnished plaque at the base of a sundial that read, "The Garden of Dreams. Let inspiration bloom, but beware the waking world's fatigue." Lena learned that an ancient king, fearing his people would become so lost in beautiful dreams that they would neglect their duties, had locked the garden away, hoping to encourage practicality. But in doing so, he had accidentally severed the kingdom from its source of inspiration. The gentle sleepiness had descended over generations, until no one even remembered the garden existed. Lena knew she couldn't tear down the wall, or reveal the garden's secret. It would be too much, too soon for the sleepy people of somnolence. The shock might be too great. She had to share its magic gently. She noticed that some of the luminous flowers had dropped their petals onto the mossy ground. They looked like little drops of solidified moonlight. She carefully gathered a handful of these petals into her pouch. They continued to glow softly, and their beautiful fragrance clung to them. The next evening, as she prepared her lamps, she had an idea. She took one of the moon petals and carefully crushed it, mixing the fragrant, glowing dust with the oil in her lamps. As she went on her rounds that evening, the lamps she lit burned with a slightly different light. It was a softer, more silvery glow than usual, and from each lamp, a faint, almost unnoticeable trace of the moon garden's scent was released into the night air. It drifted through open windows and into the homes of the sleeping townspeople. And that night, for the first time in centuries, the people of somnolence dreamed in color. The baker dreamed of baking bread swirled with cinnamon and studded with bright red berries. The weaver dreamed of a loom threaded with the colors of the sunset. A young boy dreamed of carving a flute that could play the music of the wind. When they awoke, they did not remember the dreams clearly, but the feeling of wonder and inspiration remained. The baker, without knowing why, added a pinch of cinnamon to his dough. The weaver, on a whim, sought out a trader, selling vibrant blue and yellow dyes. The young boy found a piece of wood and began to whittle. Every night, Lena would add the magic of the moon petals to her lamps. And every day, the kingdom of somnolence woke up a little more. Laughter was heard in the streets. Music began to drift from the windows. The people still moved with a gentle calm, but their eyes now held a sparkle. They were no longer just sleeping and waking. They were dreaming, and then bringing those dreams to life. Lena never told anyone about the hidden garden. It remained her secret, a quiet place of wonder. She knew that the best magic isn't the kind that shouts and dazzles, but the kind that is shared gently, like a soft light in the darkness, or a beautiful scent carried on the night air, waking up not just the body, but the soul. A beautiful dream can change the world. As we prepare for our final story of the evening, let's take one last pause. Let the scent of the moonlit garden fill your imagination. Breathe in peace, and breathe out all that remains of your day. We are nearing the end of our journey. Let this last story be a gentle ship to carry you into the vast, calm sea of your own slumber. The starlit voyage of the dreaming princess. Our final story tonight is not one of conflict or curse, but one of quiet wonder. It is the story of Princess Aurelia, who was born with stardust in her eyes and a map of the heavens in her heart. From her earliest childhood, Princess Aurelia was a dreamer. While other children played with dolls and wooden horses, Aurelia would gaze at the night sky for hours from her balcony, feeling a sense of belonging, a feeling of home. The stars were not distant points of light to her, they were friends, and every night when she fell asleep, she would visit them. Her dreams were not ordinary. In her slumber, she became the captain of a beautiful ship, a vessel made of woven moonlight and held together with threads of spider silk. Its sail was a captured piece of a nebula, shimmering with colors the waking world had never seen. And on this ship, she would sail out from her window, not into the sky, but into the vast, silent, cosmic sea of space. This was her secret, her most cherished gift. She would sail her dream ship to the constellations, which were not just patterns, but living, gentle beings. The Great Bear was a colossal, warm creature made of soft, dark light, and it would rumble a low, comforting song as she passed. Orion the Hunter was a silent, noble figure of brilliant blue stars, who would dip his head in greeting. She would anchor her ship on the crescent of the moon, which was made of a soft, cool, glowing powder, and walk along its curved shore. She would trail her fingers through the glittering rings of satin, and listen to their faint bell-like music. Her greatest joy was collecting fallen starlight, tiny warm motes of light that would dissolve into warmth and happiness when she held them in her hands. Her waking life in the castle was pleasant. She had loving parents, beautiful gowns, and endless gardens to walk in. But she often felt as though she were living two separate lives. The life of the princess was gentle and predictable, and the life of the star sailor was filled with infinite wonder. Her only sadness was that she could not share the beauty of her voyages with anyone. When she tried to describe what she saw, people would smile kindly and say she had a wonderful imagination. One night, after a particularly beautiful voyage, where she had witnessed the birth of a new star, a nova of brilliant, joyful color, she awoke with a deep sense of longing. She wanted to bring the magic of her dream world into her waking world. That morning, instead of going for a walk in the garden, she went to a forgotten room in the castle tower, a dusty studio filled with old canvases and pots of dried paint. She found brushes, and mixing her own colors, she began to paint. She did not paint portraits of her family or landscapes of the kingdom. She painted what she saw in her dreams. She painted the cosmic sea, a deep velvety indigo, alive with swirling galaxies. She painted the gentle luminous face of the man in the moon. She painted her ship of moonlight, its nebulous sail unfurled against a backdrop of 1,000 suns. She used shimmering silver paint to capture the starlight, and deep rich blues and purples for the shadows of space. Her paintings were magnificent. They were more than just images. They seemed to hold the very feeling of the cosmos, its vastness, its silence, its profound and peaceful beauty. She filled the tower room with her art. When her parents, the king and queen, finally saw what she had been doing, they were speechless. They saw in her paintings the wonder that had always been in their daughter's eyes. They did not call it imagination. They called it magic. They had her paintings hung in the grand halls of the castle. Visitors who saw them were mesmerized. They would stand for hours, gazing into the canvases, feeling a sense of peace and awe they had never felt before. The paintings seemed to quiet the mind and open the heart. The art of the dreaming princess brought a new kind of wonder to the kingdom. Aurelia finally understood. Her gift was not meant to be an escape from her world, but a way to enrich it. Her two lives, the princess and the star sailor, were not separate after all. They were two parts of the same whole. She was the bridge between the waking world and the world of dreams, and her purpose was to bring back the beauty she found there, and share it with others, and so her life found a happy rhythm. By day she was Princess Aurelia, who walked through the castle halls, sharing smiles and stories, surrounded by her beautiful art. And by night she would close her eyes, step aboard her moonbeam ship, and set sail into the endless peaceful sea of stars, on a starlit voyage to gather more light, more color, and more wonder to bring back home. Now that we have journeyed through these magical realms, it's time for you to set sail on your own voyage. May these fairy tales stay with you, comforting you as you drift into your own peaceful slumber. Our time together has come to an end. The Book of Tales is closing for tonight. The enchanted forests are growing quiet. The moonlit gardens are settling into stillness, and the starships are returning to port. Thank you for joining me on this magical journey through fairy tales. I hope these stories have brought you comfort and peace. As you lie here, ready for sleep, perhaps you can hold on to a favorite image, a crystal tree, a glowing heartstone, a luminous swan, or a sky full of friendly stars. Let these images carry you into your own world of dreams. Now, close your eyes, if you haven't already. Take one last, slow, deep breath in, and as you breathe out, let go completely. Let your dreams take you to new and wonderful worlds. Sleep well, and have the most beautiful of dreams. Good night.